It's going.
There we go.
So this is
You
the
did?
camera.
So how do we switch the camera? Oh, yeah.
You guys figured it out?
Brian?
Actually, right in here.
I look.
Recording? I don't know what that is. Is that the right video?
Start video.
That's the video.
Yes.
It ends there. That's the computer camera, so it should be those. Maybe those are off.
If anybody has a sign in, so now. Thank you. Wow.
Okay.
Oh, actually, the video's over here is playing.
I printed out, like, the.
Maybe like you could like to start it. So if you go to that monitor, you can create like 7 different games. We still want it. Someone could add that on that screen. Exactly.
It is. Do I have control over changing it or? Okay, I'll just say go to next week, that's fine. Great. Not big, like 5.
Yeah. All right. Welcome, everybody. I'm calling the planning board meeting to order. It's the May 15th Pownell Planning Board meeting. Thanks for your patience as we're trying to get the video up. It looks like we won't be able to have video on. But hopefully our audio will be recorded for posterity and those residents who want to listen to us. So the first item of business is approval of meeting minutes from April 17th meeting. I've reviewed those. I didn't have any changes following Marcia's changes. Does anyone on the board have any changes to propose? Otherwise, I'd entertain a motion. I will move that the minutes be approved as amended by Marcia. And we're up. Anyone second? Thank you, all in favor. Motion carries. Okay. We had a second public hearing. Did anyone make the May 13th public hearing?
Yeah, very good.
Okay, great. Any,
Really smoothly, yeah. Questions were great, and the questions were great, which is little questions. Most of the questions have been answered in the previous. That's why the second one really.
and so everything's moving forward to town meeting in June and we're good. Okay, great. Thanks, Bill. Thanks for going. All right, the first item of new business then is site plan review for the proposed inn at Merrill Road. And just before Ms. McCandless, just before you speak, Tom Ursha, our town planner, is sort of spearheading a new sort of procedure for site plan review. And so I'd ask Tom to speak just for a couple minutes to kind of give us some context.
Thank you. Welcome board members, applicants, townspeople, Royal River Conservation Trust members, code officer. What Matt has mentioned about site plan review, we're taking a slightly different approach than what has been typically done in the past. We're trying to internally gather up our staff reports in writing so that it'll be beneficial to the board to review things from context from the fire chief, the road commissioner, myself, and on specific occasions, our code enforcement officer. That's the informal approach. In many communities, they actually have a site plan review committee that formalizes it, puts all their recommendations together, and then sends it off to the planning board. It always ends up in the planning board because that's the voting authority. In this particular case, this is what I think is the first application for an inn in the town of Pownell. The applicant has been extremely cooperative in putting together all the details that are necessary for this review. This review is a bit different because it's a retrofit of an existing building. So it's not a new freestanding building, but there are site conditions that deal with parking, access, and the sort. You'll find in your packet that Marcia had sent off to you in advance some of the recommendations that came from staff. It's the choice of the planning board to make decisions on those. And also, if there are any waivers, the board should be considering those this evening. And additionally, this is a special exception. It's in the ordinance, it's classified as a special exception. That would also require a vote by the board. Thank you.
Yeah. We've got a few different presentations tonight. Can I just ask for 10 minutes or so?
Yeah. No problem. And I assume you want me to speak in the microphone so that I can be heard. Okay. It's a little awkward because I have people behind me. Okay, so I'm Nina McCandless. On the application, you'll see me noted as Caroline. Nina is my nickname and my preferred name. Also on the application is Elizabeth. Elizabeth is my mother. She is an estate tax planning attorney based in Portland and also serves currently as the president of the Portland Museum of Art. And that is why she's not here this evening. She has a previous engagement. So whenever we do plan for the site visit, she will try her very best to be there. Or when we meet again after this initial meeting. I think it's important to just briefly give you some context as to who I am. When I first started coming here, I was noted as the woman from New York. That's actually not true. I am from New York. I was born in New York, but I moved to Maine when I was 3 years old. Coincidentally, my family just moved here and my daughter is 6. It's a wonderful place to raise children, as you all know. And as much as I love New York City, I also love Maine. I went to elementary school in Gorham all the way up until high school. I lived at Higgins Beach in high school and in Falmouth. I attended Catherine McCauley, no longer, not surprising, where I was probably most noted as a contender for Miss Maine Field Hockey, which I did not get. And I also represented the state of Maine as the female delegate to the Youth World Summit for Hugh O'Brien in 1999. So I do have ties to Maine. And I love it here so much, but I did go to college and that led me to New York. I graduated from Columbia University with a degree in journalism or pre-journalism, as Columbia calls it. And Tom and I have this in common, a minor in urban planning. I've worked in fashion, mostly. And that led me to become the special events director at Glamour magazine. And from there, I worked tailoring special placemaking strategies for various clients in tourism and hospitality, notably Jamestown. If you've been to New York, you've been to Chelsea Market. That's one of their property. And I've opened hotels. And so this is how we sort of end up here. During the pandemic, I became obsessed with the idea that tourism is changing, that people don't want to stay in a box anymore. They want to travel and they want to experience and perhaps slow down. I also read a book called All We Can Save, which led me to become thoughtful about sustainability as it relates to tourism. And I started to think about a farm concept. A year ago, my mom was like, why don't you come to Maine? Don't do it in Hudson Valley. And here we are. So if you could go to the next slide. Thank you. Okay, so I'm going to read the concept quickly because people are at home. And I think it's important to understand what I'm proposing. So preserving the rural beauty of Pownell, this boutique 5-room inn will aim to deliver a first-class lodging experience for the traveler seeking a quiet, authentic, but elevated coastal farm stay with access to the best of Maine, including Bradbury Mountain, the greater Portland area, and Maine's mid-coast. Built-in phases, each guest accommodation will include a private bathroom, but exclude kitchens. Ginny. Guests will enjoy nature and health-inspired amenities within gardens and forests, common areas, offering each a chance to connect with the native beauty of Maine. All proposed accommodations will be built within the current structure of the property so as not to disturb the existing aesthetic and rural charm. An underlying commitment to sustainability in the natural world will be woven into each practice. For example, where possible, construction plans will utilize reclaimed and repurposed materials, while decor selections will include items made by or designed by local makers and artists. So here is some images of the property. If you're not familiar, I have, in the short 60 days that I've lived here, know that many people know the property. It has a storied history. I am attending a talk that the Pownell Historic Society or Scenic, the historical, whatever, I don't know what they're called, the society that is run through Pownell. They are doing a talk on the type of house and how it is a Maine design. And so I'm eager to learn more about it. The existing L that you can see from the upper right-hand side is raw on the interior, and the barn is as well, but it's in very good shape. So if you go to the next slide, please. These are concept renderings. So I just want to note that the barn looks very modern, and it will in fact not look that modern, but that is the style of the rendering. The goal is truly to maintain what the existing structure looks like, but we will be putting in, or we're proposing putting in private entrances, and there are existing window cuts that have been boarded up. And so we'd like to utilize those as well. I did, as Tom mentioned, I met with Jesse and we talked extensively about fire safety. So all of the windows will also meet egress mandates. The property itself is 5 acres and there are, it was a, horses were kept in the barn previously. There are 3 paddocks and the goal is to use one of the paddocks for a full cut flower garden at some point. I got in too late to start it this season. Can you go to the next slide, please? This is, again, it's concept rendering. It's the idea just to show you that we are talking about building within the structure. This shows 4 identical units. We are open to talking about maybe making a varied version of what the units look like so that guests can visit at different price points. And we are not married to any one design at this time. This is just the early stages of what we're talking about. But this sort of helps to understand like how we will utilize the space. Can you go to the next slide, please? And then this, again, is concept renderings of what we would do in the space. Again, incorporating feedback from Jesse. Originally, we had spiral staircases. That's not ideal for fire and rescue. We're happy to make any amendments that are necessary to keep, safety as a priority, but also allowing it to feel open and utilizing, the reclaimed space. The actual white and brown aesthetic that you see is not what is planned. It's just to give you an idea of how the space will be utilized. Ideally, as mentioned, we'd be incorporating art and design from local makers. And that's something I really enjoy doing in finding that. And then you can go to the next slide. Okay, this is just to show everyone here, in case you're not aware of where the property is. It's about a half a mile from the Freeport line, where Merrill Road runs into Hunter, or Hunter turns into Merrill. And not that far from the desert of Maine. It's about 6 minutes from 295. It is about 17 minutes from the Franklin Street exit in Portland. It is about 23 minutes from Brunswick, and it is 3 to 4 minutes from the center of town here. Go to the next slide. Okay, so this is the site plan, and this is probably what we will spend time speaking about, and I'm happy to answer questions. I do want to hand out to the board. You were given copies of the site plan, and I incorporated some notes from Tom that were also from Jesse about the size of the driveway that we are proposing. Matt also came by to talk about how we are going to change the existing driveway. We're actually not changing it too much. There was the driveway in 2016 was changed. And so we are actually just connecting it to the older driveway. But I had not indicated on your original site plan that it was going to be 20 feet wide. And so that's that's the call out. It is one difference, but that's what the change is. So application. I didn't check this off, but because I believe the planning board is supposed to do this, but the site plan that is here addresses all of the items that are to be checked, not by me, but by somebody. I'm not sure how the process works. Tom, I don't know if that's something you do or. So I can just. Yes. And if you, in the interest of time, I placed all of the items on the site plan. And if they were not applicable, I just noted them as not applicable. Just because I know there are many items that you have to get through this evening.
So Nita, are you asking for any waivers?
I think as it pertains, I'm not asking for any waivers.
For the special exception, I understand.
I'm asking for, yeah, exactly. So because I'm zoned as RA and per the ordinance, it's permitted, but with your permission to do this. And I think that there are items on here, like I don't want to pave the driveway, right? Because I think that that takes away from the rural beauty of the space. And so as it pertains to drainage, because I'm not paving and we're using pea stone, that's noted. I don't know if I need to get a waiver in that case, because I'm not addressing those items.
Planning perspective. So, and the environment. The grading and
All right, I have a couple questions, and I think other members of the board might as
course.
well before we
Yeah.
sort of speak about our next steps. You're not, I think I understood you to say you're not talking about expanding the footprint of the existing barn.
I'm not.
Okay. And you're not asking about any events that would take place there? Would things like weddings or anything like that? Is that a part?
Not at this time. I'm not planning to do that. I think that if there was a one-off case, I would be coming in front of the board to do that. It's not the basis of what we're trying to do. And I'm also aware that there's a wedding venue in town. And I think that, you know, I'm trying to bolster business here. I'm not trying to take away from anyone. And so it's also not, I mean, I have a like very strong background in events, and the previous homeowner was telling me that I should do events there. My assessment of the property is that it would require a lot. I'd have to bring a lot in order to accomplish that. And I think on a case by case, if someone came to me and said, we really want to do this, I would have to come to the town and say, this is how we'd pull it off. But there's not a sufficient parking to hold a 100-person event. There is not sufficient coverage. There's, you know, we'd have to tent. It's a way more complicated at that. And I'm not prepared to do that. And I know that within the definition of an inn, I'm permitted to have a restaurant, for example, but we're not seeking to do that at this time because that just feels a lot larger than what we're trying to do. We really want to create accommodations, and from those accommodations, I'm hoping to plan really beautiful experiences for guests that tap into the local market, but that don't necessarily take place on the property.
Thank you. Any other questions from folks on the board? Mercedes?
On the site plan, we saw that little tiny parking is future parking, and then up there you have it as owner parking, it's like a lot all by itself.
Yes. So Matt had me note that. So that's field parking currently on the property. And we have that noted as in case, for example, I needed to utilize all of the 10 spots that I have put in the space, we would pull our car around. Like that would, I had it noted as owner parking. Tom and I talked about how it's better noted as future parking just because it's.
So it's not there now.
Well, no, so it is, it's okay. There's, it was used by the previous owner as, you know, she pulled her horses in. When Matt came to the property, I asked him specifically about it, and he said, no, we have something called field driveways. If it's not utilized on a regular basis and it's needed in a pinch, like just note it. I didn't want to not note it in case we did have to utilize it, but I don't want guest parking back there. And in fact, that side of the property, we're trying to keep for personal use and not for guests. Yeah, no problem.
Any other questions?
I guess, I mean, just from that last comment, I guess, you're living in the remainder of the house, that's not going to be,
Yes. And it'll be, I guess if you want to call it owner operated. It's, I think because of the nature of how small and boutique we're trying to run it, we're going to stay in the front part of the house. And, it is noted as phases. So the plan is we'd like to, as soon as possible, do the barn. And then the idea would be that we would put a 5th unit in the L, which is unfinished currently. It is also a much smaller space than what we have in the barn. So I have to note it because I think, would have to create an access point through the barn. But that would be the only guest stay that's like attached to the closest to attached to the house. Yeah, you're welcome.
All right, thanks, Mr. Campbell.
You're welcome. So I have two questions. Do you want to do a site visit?
Yeah, so we're gonna discuss that now.
Okay.
We'll have a conversation about what the next steps are.
Okay,
And we'll ask you to come back to them.
got it. Okay, no
Yeah,
problem.
thank you. So I think in terms of next steps, we've got a few decisions to make. We've got a decision on completeness, and I think that can probably be a quick decision. And then we have to decide whether we want to take a site plan review, a site visit, and whether we want to have a public hearing before making a final vote. My view on the site visit, I'm entirely open to what others have to say there. I've driven by the property a couple times. There's not a significant expansion of the barn. I don't know that we would get that much. The flip side of that is we haven't decided on a special exception in a long time, that they should be special, and I think a lot of diligence should be put into them. So if people feel strongly about doing a site visit, I'd certainly welcome it. But I don't think one's really necessary here. Any strong feelings one way or the other?
Well, I have a question. Is anybody in the audience here tonight, like here to, because they have an opinion either for or against this specific project?
No.
Yeah.
Good point.
Yeah.
Yeah, in terms of a public hearing, that does sort of say something about the necessity of a public hearing. One easy sort of middle ground there is to hold next month's meeting as a public hearing, and we could give a final vote at that meeting. And so we just open it up for public hearing from 6 to 6:20 and then finalize a vote at that time. I would propose we do that because I want to make sure we do have public hearings as a general matter when we do special exceptions. Tom?
If you follow that course of action.
The board should decide which Wednesday you plan to meet, given that the 19th is a holiday.
Oh, Juneteenth.
So the options would be obviously the Wednesday before or the Wednesday after.
So, first, is everybody okay holding a public hearing in we'll have to hold the June meeting one way or the other. Does everyone agree that we ought to hold this as a public hearing and then give a final vote in the June meeting?
Yeah, I think that's an efficient way to do it.
Okay, great. All right, so just because it's brought up now, let's go ahead and get a date for the June meeting. And so that we can give it to Nina as well. I think June 26th is slightly preferable for me, but I can do the 12th as well.
I think 26 might be better.
Anybody else?
26 is good.
All right. So we will then hold a public hearing on the 26th in addition to the June meeting.
When you are holding the public hearing, how do you inform residents of the plan? Just, I do understand that there are people, I feel like this is gonna be received well by some and totally not by others, right? Because it seems like a scary thing. I'd like to, because obviously I wanna do this.
I think I can answer your question. So the public hearings have to be noticed a couple weeks in advance, and we notice those both on the website and through the Forecaster, which is the local paper, I'm sure. And they're given these little nuggets. Yeah. So folks will know if they view those. And then your application can also be submitted online. And so it'll be publicly available there. And so the presentation that you gave tonight can be online. The recording of this and your presentation earlier will be online. And every now and then people do show up at public hearings sometimes.
We've had public hearings where almost nobody shows up, and then there's been things where there was somebody had a proposed subdivision and a lot of people show up. So, the fact that this isn't a drastic altercation of a footprint, you might not have a lot of people show up. We'll see. You never know.
But you'll have a chance at the public hearing to give a very brief presentation, just like you did tonight. And it's not a democratic process. It's not like if there's enough opposition, it's a no. It's a matter of making sure that the town gets a chance to be heard.
That makes sense.
Okay, Tom, do you have any items on the application that we're missing or that we need any further?
Let's just do a quick walk through. The access points have really been well addressed and meet with the approval of all the staff members as reflected in the memorandums to you. Sidewalks are not applicable. The open spaces have been preserved. There are no loading docks. All the parking areas have been designated on the site plan. There are no planned or intended easements. Service areas is generally put on there when there's going to be a delivery truck from Cisco coming in to deliver some food products or something like that. So that's also a non-applicable. Location of all buildings within 200 feet of the parcel. There's one that I believe is 205 feet away. So that's also okay. The other requirements are all optional that are on the second page of site plan review. The applicant has already addressed some of those optionals just so that you are aware where the subsurface system would be going. That's under the authority of the code enforcement officer. Landscaping plan, the applicant, correct me if I'm wrong, is basically the establishment of a informal cutting flower garden that is reflected on the site plan. The sign plan would be forthcoming at a point. It needs to secure that approval through the code enforcement officer. Erosion and sedimentation plan is really not applicable because you're working on a retrofit here. It's always the board's decision on much larger projects as proof of financial capacity. I'm not sure this is appropriate on this one, but it's a board decision on that.
I think given the type of work that's happening.
One point of clarification, however, because the final outcome would be 5 units. It's really a 2-phase project. So the planning board should decide if you're approving 4+1 at a later date, or you're approving 4 at this point in time. But the applicant has been forthright in telling you exactly where if that 5th unit can be built out, it'll be within the existing L of that barn structure, the L connecting the house to the barn. So it's got still the same footprint. And there's adequate parking, even if there is a 5th unit. But the board should be very clear, both in the posting of the public hearing and also in your approval, if this is a 5-unit approval or a 4+1, which means you'd have to come back for that other unit.
I'd propose that we post the question about whether it should be approved as a 5-unit. If there's some discussion, folks want to reduce it to 4 and then later have 1, that's fine. We don't need to notice that. But noticing it as 5 is sort of the easier way to go.
Oh, okay.
May I just ask one more point of clarity? Just because I was reading through the checklist and especially the movement from 4 to 5 and looking at this business and office use too. The piece of the connector.
The L, yes.
The L,
Uh-huh.
no, I can't go to the talk. I want to. Is that going to be your service area office to support this? Like in terms of supporting the cleaning supplies, the place where these
Yes.
people check in, is that going to be right here? And is that part of living space now, or is that also vacant?
So that's also vacant.
Okay,
And we will utilize, it's 2 stories currently. It doesn't, we'd like to utilize the second floor only for the proposed 5th unit, and we will use the ground floor for storage. It's like,
Okay.
the previous owner wanted to, make it into a garage. It's concrete floors, and the second floor is built out, but it's just unfinished.
okay. And so my question is, would you also be supporting this business from this little area here, like right there?
I mean, we wouldn't necessarily, I don't know that it's appropriate to put an office there.
Okay.
It's appropriate to store items there. I'd have to finish it if it was going to be an office. I think we've talked about, I mean, the world's changed. We haven't thought about the check-in process. We would like to obviously have a point at which guests are able to check in, but we also will be thinking of mobile ways for people to check in. I haven't thought of that in terms of incorporating it into the L, but there's definitely space for that to happen. It's just, it would require construction of that space, but I could put an office there. And if that was the recommendation, we would consider that.
Okay, no, I'm just thinking like the delineation between personal and business, just so that we're really.
Yes, there is a clear delineation in the L even. There's a staircase and there are doors on the side of one staircase and then it's open to the other side. So it's a clear delineation and we want that obviously for ourselves too. I do want to call something out because it has to be filled in by someone. Are there any federal and state permits required? There is a state permit required. Because we are providing lodging, I have to work with the state fire marshal. I've already been in touch with them. They are aware that I am going before the town. And only when you make the determination, they're aware that it's also a special exception. So I can't start that application process until I'm granted the special exception, but there is a permit.
We'll make any approval that we give will just be subject to a condition that you get those permits.
Yes, I'm just letting it, yeah, there's just one permit and it's through the fire marshal's office. So, okay, you're welcome.
All right. Next item of business is the final site plan review for the trailhead parking on Elmwood by the Royal River Conservation Trust. I know some folks are here. Would you guys like to make a presentation or talk at all about what you're proposing?
Yeah. Yeah, and I've got a few documents to share with you guys to help reference a few extra site plans. We'll have one on the poster board there.
Thank you.
And then I also have some information on site extensions for the proposed parking lot. Have one. Right. So my name is Hanai Garrison. I am the stewardship manager at Royal River Conservation Trust. With me here tonight, we have Amanda Lessard, our new conservation director, and Alan Stearns, our executive director. So they may chime in and share some of their knowledge. So we are here to present our proposed parking lots on Elmwood Road. In order to improve public safety and access for our Elmwood trails. The parking lot would be constructed on our around 1.2 acre parcel that has road frontage on Elmwood Road. Alan had previously presented proposal for a parking lot on this parcel back in 2020. And we've made some improvements to our proposal based on your feedback. Part of that feedback is we had our surveyor put the parking lot on the site plan and clearly articulate where it would be in relation to the parcel boundaries. You can see we increased the amount of parking spaces from 4 spots to 7, one of which would be handicap accessible. There would also be a 20-foot wide driveway leading to the parking lots. And it would be wide enough that overflow parking, it could accommodate overflow parking along the driveway. And it would also discourage people from parking on the road shoulders. So the parking lot would only develop around 3% of the total acreage. So it would really be a small portion of the parcel, and it would be built on a more upland area of the parcel to allow the natural drainage sections to stay where they are. And it would also be, it's been moved closer into the parcel so that there would be like a vegetation buffer from the roadside to minimize that as well. And the existing trailhead that is currently on the adjacent parcel for Elmwood Trails would be rerouted to the rear of the parking lot so that people would just hike into the parking lot and then they wouldn't be encouraged to park kind of on the road shoulders like they're doing now. We wouldn't have any lighting or utilities, so we wouldn't need to worry about that. And when we walked on site with Tom the other day, he expressed some concerns about the turning radii. And so we do have a entrance permit from the Maine DOT that we obtained in 2020. And so with the DOT, there has to be a minimum turn radii of 10 feet. And so we would, given the width of the driveway and the anticipated low volume of traffic that this parking lot would see, we would recommend or propose a 15-foot turn radii at the intersection. That is just the brief overview, and I'm sure you guys have questions, so feel free to ask anything that needs clarification.
So this plan, this doesn't have the 15-foot radii on the plan.
Not on the plan, correct?
All right,
Yeah.
just wanted to clarify. Thanks so much. Any questions from folks on the board?
And can you just remind me how Royal River maintains their parking lots in the winter?
We have someone come and plow them,
Okay.
so they are accessible during the winter.
Thank you so much. And would you, well, I guess that's premature. Never mind. Never mind.
My only
Mhm.
thought, and I remember this coming up several years ago. My only concern, and I think this solves a lot of the concern, and that's the whole
Mhm.
point.
Right,
My only concern about this location is that people park on the side of the road, and it's Elmwood, and people who know the road, it's really, people, including myself, drive way too fast on it.
right. Yeah,
So I want to just continue to encourage you and anyone to not park on the side of the road.
of
And if you guys
course.
have, like, if you can put signs up, if you have the ability.
Yeah, we could put up no parking signs along the road shoulders, and we would come back to you guys later for a site permit for a yard arm sign that would say parking lot this way. And we also talked to Maine DOT, and they gave us some proposed locations of signs to put before and after the parking lot to give people advance notice that, hey, there's a turn here. And they actually do have the, you want to just have a visual reference. So we would probably do one of these signs, because it is every people do that road, and we care about public safety. But yeah, we hope that overflow parking would first fill up the driveway and not the road shoulders.
Any other questions for Hanai? Okay, Tom? Yeah, go ahead.
Given the cooperation of the applicant to put in the 15-foot radii, that would logically seem that you're going to have to adjust your culvert sizing as well as your culvert length.
Mhm.
So I would suggest to the board that prior to approval, that there'll be the proper design. I think you're only showing a 15-inch culvert,
Mhm.
which would have to be maintained once a month. It's just, I think it's way too small for that amount of coverage, particularly once you drop your 15-foot radii on. So it's undersized, and it also the plan does not reflect once you drop your radii on. So I'm assuming there's an amended plan showing the radii, showing the culvert update, and how the calculations came about to be 15 inches. That's a small culvert.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I don't know if Amanda or Alan would have more insight on the culvert design, but
I don't know if there was a design. It just,
Yeah.
it's a very odd to see on that amount of coverage in an area that has high gradients,
Mhm.
wetlands on both sides of the parking area. When I went on site with the applicant, it was pretty wet out there. And once it's improved with radii, in good conscience, I would have to say you'd have to go back. Certainly you have to improve the length of it.
Mhm.
Because
Yeah, I
it's
think it's
designed to
roughly
end,
30
without
feet
radii.
long, yeah.
and that should be reflected on a new plan.
Where's the height of the ridge? Is it like here? Like, how much flow are we gonna get through that? Like, where's the height of land? Is it like here?
Well, the highest point of the land is where the parking is, and then it drops off from all angles.
So that's
So
the height
that-
of the land.
Pretty much for the front part, for the
Yeah.
front part of it. That is the highest elevation there,
Right.
but
Yes.
of course, then it keeps going higher in the back.
Yes, I'm just trying to anticipate, if you're at the height of land, how much is gonna be going through the culvert? It's gonna be the flow off the road, and then it's gonna be.
You'd almost have to do drainage calculations
Yeah.
to see, what type of, and they're not gonna, it's not gonna be that
Mhm.
large of an improvement, so there won't be that much
Yeah.
more runoff. It's just the
Right.
existing runoff that exists currently.
Right, which is why we wanted to keep the existing drainage channels to not disrupt that, yeah.
Almost certain, 15 inches. I'm almost certain 15 inches came from DOT, and we just carried it forward, so I think we would use public work and DOT on their recommendation. I'm not sure it needs to be in here.
Culverts only work if they're kept clean. And I think that's the dilemma that we run astray on in terms of site planning, because unless there's maintenance of those culverts, the 15 becomes the 10 very easily. You get your fall leaf clog up in there, and then you've got a flowage of 6 inches. And so the maintenance is the key factor. And I'm not, is it a state responsibility, state road? Is it a town responsibility? So maybe we should have the input of the road commissioner on this and see what Matt thinks might be an appropriate maintenance solution.
I'd say maintenance for us is the easy part, because that's what we do on our trailers.
Yeah.
Once a week or whenever it is, unclogging the culvert is, we're motivated to do it, and I expect it to be our responsibility. What I'd say is we bring back a revised plan with culvert sizing and after consultation with DOT. Of course, this is where these changes.
Okay, all right, I think those are the two items then. Is there anything else, Tom, or anyone else on the board? What's the
One
flag?
question, just to clarify on that. So they were originally designed with the 10-foot turning radius, and that was what DOT was said acceptable, but where we've done
Not sure where the
input that,
10 foot came from. It's not reflected in the site plan.
okay.
Maybe Amanda could shed some light on that.
I can only answer that question based on the DOT entrance permit. The survey plan that was submitted as part of the entrance permit application had turn radii at the intersection of the driveway with the roadway. It wasn't called out on that plan, but DOT rules specify that a turn radius has a minimum of 10 feet. 15 feet is pretty common and it's not huge. That doesn't necessitate, in my experience of reading many municipal ordinances and site designs for this kind of use, that it doesn't really extend the width of a culvert. Like the culvert length and sizing with a turn radii 10 or 15 feet is not going to change the length of the culvert in my experience. But you know, if there's a need to check in with DOT, I think that that's fine, that's acceptable. But 15-foot turn radii is pretty common for really low volume private roads that would handle far more traffic even than this parking lot would see.
Well, my question is kind of like, are we saying you have to come back with these changes, or are we saying we would like to see these changes? Kind of like, are they actually required that they need to have a culvert a certain size, or they need to have a 15-foot turning radius, or, yeah, that's
Yeah,
my
I
question.
think Tom's point, and I think it's a good one, is that our road commissioner should review the culvert size to make sure that it's suitable for the driveway. I mean, I think one possible approach here is to say, we'll approve it as drafted, subject to the subject to a condition of approval. Tom, would you have a problem with our doing that?
It's always good to have the board see the amended plan. Because do you typically put your signatures on the approved site plan? So you'd want to be signing the amended site plan.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
I mean, otherwise you're gonna have to put this in the narrative that these are the conditions.
Okay.
You also need to determine if you wish to have a public hearing or not.
Yeah, I think for a site like this, we've already held one site walk out there. I know the plan was slightly different. But I just don't see much benefit to a public hearing on an item of this size. I'll say again, though, this is, Alan, Hannah, do you think you would be able to be back in June, or is this a longer time frame that would take to get these changes? Good for June? Okay, then, you know, we could hold the public, we could again include this in the public hearing in June, if people want to be heard on it. Then, yeah.
I was listening. So you said that the width was going to be 10 feet,
20 feet
20 feet with cars parking alongside, possibly for overflow?
outside of the right of way, yes.
Okay. I was just concerned about if rescue was called, would they be
Yes.
able to get their vehicles in there if that happens? Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Is coming back in June, is that have a negative effect? Is there a timeline on construction, or you're okay with that? Okay.
Okay, so
Thank
we'd ask that you come back in June with the 15-foot radii showing, having spoken with the road commissioner to confirm his approach with the culvert. Okay? Thank you all for the presentation. Okay. All right, Tom, the next item of business here, actually, I'm gonna switch around here a little bit because I know there are other folks here, so we can move on to our work later. This is the item in communications about the letter of inquiry regarding minor subdivision at 215 Tuttle Road. I'm sorry, I've forgotten your name.
Steve Leary.
Steve?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, thank you for having us tonight. Introduce myself again. I'm Stephen Leary. We live at 8 Farmview Drive off of Allen Road. This is my partner, Mary Adams. We've been in town for 14 years. We live right on the corner of Allen and Elmwood, right across from the William Allen Farm. We were there for like 10 years, and then we love Pownell, so we just picked up and built a house across the street. So here we are. What we did was we bought a property at 215 Tuttle Road. It's a parcel about 8.5 acres. Has a small 2-bedroom, 2-bath ranch on it. And what we'd like to do is make a minor subdivision out of that property. So the reason why we're here is, one of the stumbling blocks that I'm running into is trying to get somebody to come out and take a look at this property, and everybody that I've talked to is 3 to 4 months out. So what my thought, and I spoke extensively with Tom about coming in, at least putting my proposal in front of the board to see get your thoughts and ideas. So this is.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks. So, William, I'm gonna, just kind of, I don't want to sort of lead you astray. So the application process, it's the requirement that an application be before the board is both legal and it's practical.
Yeah.
So we are not able to give sort of advice before an application comes to us. Both because it would upset the validity of an actual permit if we were to grant you one.
Right.
And as a practical matter, because then we would both be overloaded with lots of different application or requests for sort of ideas in advance of an application. And we might lead you astray. We might say, oh yeah, it looks fine. And then 3 months later, you put in all this money and we sort of aren't able to
Understood.
confirm or, so I'm happy to sort of try to answer any procedural questions that you have. And if you've got, we might be able to answer some very specific questions. I'm sort of doubtful seeing what you've handed out. But do you have sort of questions about the way the process works or anything like that?
No, I'm familiar with the process.
Okay.
We went through it when we built our home on Farmview Drive.
Okay,
What I'm trying to do here is save time, save money. I don't want to go out and hire a survey to have them locate boundaries and lay these lots in here and then come to the board and say, oh, we can't do this, we can't do that. So my thought was I can get the board's input in concept that if you look at this, is this in concept okay with you? Basically, is what I'm looking for.
Are you anticipating asking for like special exceptions?
Nope.
Okay.
To me, this is pretty straightforward. Each lot is going to be a minimum. It's probably going to be 2 3-acre lots and then another 2.5-acre lot. We have 1,000 feet of road frontage on Tuttle Road, and this one lot that's in the back, we're going to take advantage of some road frontage on Tuttle, and it's almost like a flag where you're going to have the lot in the back will have road frontage on Tuttle Road.
The road would be where this little line that connects.
Right.
What you're,
So that's the road frontage for that back lot.
that would be like the driveway you're thinking.
No, we're hoping to put the driveway off of Goss Lane here. And then option wise, we can do a driveway from Tuttle and deeded access here through another lot. If that was the case, or Goss Lane because it's a little shorter. So.
Yeah, I mean, as Matt said, I mean, if it was a conservation subdivision with more units, there's more interaction with the planner and the planning board.
Yep.
With minor subdivisions, then it really is more of a, does this fit with what the regulations say? And if it does, then we are basically required to approve it, so.
Okay, so as long as I fit the regulation by the ordinances.
if you bring an application that meets the ordinance, then it's gonna, it needs to be approved.
Okay.
That's the way it works.
All right,
We don't have the ability to say, oh, we don't like the way this looks or anything like that.
okay. Well, I just
There are
wanted to,
some discretionary pieces in the ordinance, like buffering and things like that, that we might ask.
understood. Yeah, so my thought is get my ducks in a row early, try to get ahead of it, be as proactive as possible. Met with Tom, met with the road commissioner, want to do my due diligence up front, just so I'm not surprised, you're not surprised, and we can do this in a cost-effective and timely manner.
What I could tell you, you're working with Tom and with Matt is a very good idea.
Yeah.
It's very rare that they would come to us and say, we like this, and for us to say no.
Yeah,
So
okay.
work with this town staff and, I'm sorry that we can't sort of give you a yes or no. Obviously, this is very preliminary.
No, you've given me exactly what I was looking for, as long as I follow the ordinances and follow Tom's advice. And we had a great conversation, so I don't anticipate any surprises. I just, like I said, wanted to be upfront, let you guys know that we'll be back with an application. Looking forward to seeing you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Good luck, getting people to come out. I know. Tight labor market.
Oh, it is. It's pretty unbelievable, but thank you.
All right, so Tom, update on water capacity RFP process.
Well, lots of good news for the board and for the town. We had two highly qualified engineering groups submit to the RFP. The Economic Development and Sustainability Committee, the committee that's responsible actually for the issuance of this RFP, went through a detailed scoring system and has recommended to the select board that Drumlin Environmental, which is based on India Street in Portland, be the engineering group to do the water capacity and test well research work. Basically, the study is an investigatory study to study the hydrology of the area, to see if there's a potentiality for at any point connecting with one of the aquifer systems, and to enhance the town's public water capabilities. Right now, we're working on a 2-inch and a 3-inch line with a 8 by 8-foot cistern. So this is going to be a very important research study that's being done. It's being funded. I secured a grant from the state of Maine for a 75% reimbursable grant up to $40,000. So that happened to be the exact amount in Drumlin's proposal. And the scope of services is really quite detailed. What's next in the steps, it'll be going to the select board. Our town attorney will be working on a contract that's agreeable both to the town as well as the consulting firm. We hope with all of the due diligence that we've done to see the startup of this in July of this year and a culmination of the project no later than November 5th of this year. So it's, as you've heard me say repeatedly, water needs to be your greatest asset. And now we're going to find out if there is appropriate water. And part of this, the last portion is that part of this research and investigation is being done should there be an opportunity to slowly and gradually and aesthetically build out the center village. We need to do it with water.
Tom, this is such great news, and to be able to do it on someone else's dime is even
Yes.
better. Thank you very much for spearheading it.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Is there anything you need from us in this process or sort of want in terms of planning board input or anything?
Just to let me know occasionally if you want me to give you a progress report, midsummer, how things are progressing. Certainly, you're welcome to see the scope of services that's been recommended. If any of you have a specific interest in it, I have a copy with me, or I can provide you with it. And then at the outcome of this study, I'll be giving you the results.
Great.
Okay.
Thanks, Tom. All right. The next item is conservation and minor subdivision checklists. Sam Pikus put these together, I believe. And I've reviewed it. It looks very good. I guess the one minor point that I made was the lot density map, which I think we should spell out a little bit more. This is kind of where the rubber hits the road on those density discussions. And so I'll circulate before the next meeting some additional criteria on the lot density map to make sure that we've got those are guiding applicants in the right direction on what needs to be shown there. Anybody have any input on these checklists?
So lot density map, that's using the old rules to calculate how many.
That's the
which is
that's the
now
fake map.
cut out of the actual ordinances, so no
Yep.
one even has the reference to it.
Well, no, I think it's not using the old major subdivision rules. It's using the applicable frontage and lot density requirements in the zoning area. So you take the frontage that you're allowed on the existing public road, and that determines then how many lots you can get. And from one 600-foot new road, right? That was all the discussion that we had about.
That might be worth putting in there.
Yeah, exactly.
Just like have a little paragraph explaining that.
Exactly. Yeah. Any other changes on this? No? All right, folks, please do review it. And if you've got any proposals, we've got time to make these changes. Okay. Let's see, planning board procedures. Did everybody get these? These were circulated. This is sort of the welcome. Oh, sorry. Planning board procedures and welcome to the planning board. I don't know that I saw the planning board procedures. Did anyone get these?
That one that's 11/23 is from November. That an older
Yeah, I
version?
think they were in the email, but they're at the bottom.
Oh, okay. All right, I'm gonna suggest that we review these in June. I've looked through the welcome to the planning board document. It's very helpful. There are a couple changes on here that reflect the addition of town staff. This is a helpful document to just kind of be aware of and to use. Any questions on it or observations?
One minor edit is to not have this in bold in the second
Sure.
sentence.
Okay.
Yeah, my only edit on this one was, I think it's great and it's really nice, but one of the best resources isn't mentioned, and that was there's actually a training that the state group does, and I think that should be mentioned in here because that's one of the best ways to get a sense of the role of a planning board. So I think calling that out is a.
Yeah, and I've stopped circulating those MMA emails. This is the Maine Municipal Association, which puts on these I'd say every other month, they put on a really good workshop. And if you want to go to those, the town will pay for it. So you just get in touch with Becky and she will hook you up and register you and everything. And they're great. They have them on open meeting rules, FOA rules, meaning any emails we send, we can't send to more than 3 people on the board and, or more than 2 people on the board, sorry. And they're all open to the public if requested and those sorts of things. So good to know about and good to go to. All right.
Nope.
On May 30th, is on local planning board and board of appeals.
Oh, great.
That's it.
Yeah.
A new member
Yeah.
should be told to go to that. Yeah,
Great.
it's really boring. It's really good.
That's what we're good at.
3 hours.
So the Junetown newsletter,
No, I'm just joking.
the Junetown newsletter, I don't think that Marcia has put this together. Does anyone want to take the labor and oar on this? It's due by next Friday, I guess, whatever May 24th is. This would be just a report on what's been happening with the planning board, what we've done. I don't think there's been much, but we might just observe that there are a couple of applications before the board, that sort of thing. Anyone, paragraph. Okay.
I will try
Thanks
to
for
do that.
Sorry to twist your
Sure.
arm. Thank you.
1 paragraph.
All right, and we got a request from a town resident that anyone who's speaking, turn their microphone on, and that we ask folks to come to the mic when, we should have mentioned that at the outset of the meeting, come to the mic when speaking from one of the residents' chairs. Any other items?
I did notice at a previous meeting, listening back, like the first time we had it, I thought I need to lean into the microphone, and you don't. If you do that, then actually it's too loud. So it does a good job of collecting your voice if you just are relaxed and not
Thank
eating
you.
the microphone. So.
All right, so I'm just gonna mention one more time. So I said this last year in May or June, I'm stepping down as of the July meeting, so I'm gonna be stepping off the board. So I just want to flag that. I think it's important that we have a chair. I'd be happy to help someone transition into the role. In many ways, it's a very fulfilling role. It's also a burdensome role, but as you know, Marcia does a mountain of work to make it easier for all of us. So again, I'd be happy to sort of work with folks both in transitioning and in guiding over the course of the next couple of years to the extent that I can be helpful. I'm happy to pitch in any way. Also happy to talk to anyone who's interested in taking on the role. Sad that I'm not going to be here over the course of the next couple of years, but it is that time in life. All right. With
Thank you
that,
for your service.
Thanks, Orion.
It's definitely being new to this and joining the board a couple of years ago, having people with your experience and thoughtfulness has been a good guide through the process, and I appreciate it.
Thank you. All right. Well, with that, I will move that we adjourn the meeting. And it is adjourned.